Remote Ruby. That's your
Yes,
podcast. How long you
that
been doing
is my
that?
baby. I started doing remote Ruby in 2019. It was either the end of 2019 or the very beginning of 2020. Before then, I was originally a panelist on the Ruby Rogues podcast. I did that for several months and then left because of some concerns I had. And then I started my own podcast with my friend Nate Hopkins and my buddy Ron Cook. We started the Ruby Blend. That went for several months. And then at the time I was working at a company with Nate, who is an incredibly skilled developer. He created Stimulus Reflex, if anyone's not familiar with his work. So at the time we were working at a startup together, and we were producing this podcast. We were producing we ended up also, we started our podcast network at that company. And for several different tech podcasts, like, was it Views with View? Is that the View podcast? I think maybe not called that anymore. I think they might've changed the name, but for several different tech podcasts. And I had been a guest on Jason and Chris's podcast before, and I really liked the format of their show because it was much more friendly, and I was on much more panel-y shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where everyone goes in a circle and we talk about our feelings about what the guest just said, and then we go back around, and that every time. And I liked Chris and Jason didn't always have guests. It was a lot more like a personal, like almost like sitting around a campfire style. I've heard someone describe it before.
Mm-hmm.
So around the time that I left Ruby Rogues, Chris and Jason reached out to me and they were like, hey man, like, we heard about, blah, blah, blah. And if you ever want to just join us on Remote Ruby, you're more than welcome, which, like, I was very grateful for, because for them, like, at that point, I've been writing Ruby for a little over a year, and the Go Rails guy was like saying this to me. So like, I'm like freaking out internally, but I didn't end up joining them straight away. But I started while we were doing the Ruby Blend, and then when the Ruby Blend kind of fizzled out because the startup we were working at no longer became a startup anymore. And COVID hit and all this other stuff. So we just kind of had to all go our separate ways, and stop the Ruby Blend. And that's when I kind of devoted full attention to Remote Ruby.
Cool. So you guys recently landed an interview with DHH. How was that? I mean, I watched it, but how did it feel to land that?
I've interviewed DHH like 4 times, I think, by now.
Oh, wow.
Over the years.
Yeah.
I first interviewed him in 2019. Yeah, I think 2019. Back on Ruby Rogues, and then we've interviewed him a few times on Remote Ruby. Talking with DHH is always a trip, right? Because sometimes he comes in with a professional mic, sometimes he comes in with AirPod headphones or an AirPod mic, and you don't really know like what the difference is. For us, like, it's like he brings in more listens than any other podcast like list or any other like host or guest that we get. So that's
sure.
Like, you got to consider that component of it. It felt good. Like, he is a great guest because he just will go. Like, he's like a lawnmower engine, right? You just rev him up and then he'll just go.
Right.
And so he's great because, like, you don't really you can kind of almost just like sit back as a host, like in the seat, and just let him take it, right? And let him go where he wants to go and talk about what he wants to talk about. And it's always fun. There's always like, there's an excitement there, right? Like, like, I'm still like, this is only my 3rd year writing Ruby. Like, I'm still, in terms of time, like, a newer developer. And, there's those like, oh, it's DHH. Like, oh, there's this giddiness, this excitement to it. But there's also like, he's just another guy. So I think at this point I've talked to him several times, and I've come down off the high horse of like, oh my God, he's this invincible program, to like, okay, he's got some interesting ideas, and like, he really boosts our ratings. So for that, we really enjoy it. And it's always great to hear like the why behind certain things, right? So we do get that option. And like, I learned something that I've wondered for so long, and it was not related to Rails 7 at all, but I was like, when do you use action versus active for these library names? That's all I wanted to know. I've been thinking about it for so long. I just wanted to know. And And in that moment, I was able to learn that, right? And he was able to explain why. And I was like, so then there's that like really fun aspect of it. Like you can ask the creator of the library that like puts food on your table, like any question you want about it. Right. Or ask for any feature.
Yeah. And I'd love to talk to him. I haven't had a chance yet, but he's very opinionated. And I actually like that because I'm like that myself. I've spent a long time doing this stuff. I know how I like things done, and I have reasons I like them done that way, and that's by golly the right way, and then everybody else is wrong. So he's not a tool about it. He's got reasons, and he has opinions, and he's not afraid to express them. I find that refreshing. I like it.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see, because like for me, strong opinions loosely held, right? Like I love to like change an opinion because that means I've gathered new information that's changed my view on something, right? And I don't like arguing with people, but because I come off hot. But it would be interesting to see like two strong personalities, like his personality in with someone else that's like that, because I have a friend who's very argumentative, and like the idea of them being in the same room together is like, it's like chaos inducing. So it would be interesting because he has very strong opinions. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
If you like this clip and want to watch another one, you can click right here. Or if you want to watch the full video, you can click here.